Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Nemo, and Rick and Morty Season 4 is fast approaching, which means it's time to do what we do best: overanalyze everything and inject our own opinions in places where they shouldn't be. Hell yeah, internet. That's right, there's no better show to theorize about than Rick and Morty in my opinion, because it could really go in any direction, and it's crazy to see a show as absurd as this have somewhat of a serialized plot, to have ongoing story arcs and plot threads. It's just not what I expected watching the first episode about shoving giant seeds up Morty's ass. But at the same time, that's what makes it so good, and that's what keeps us coming back for more. So today, I wanted to touch on a theory that we haven't talked about in a while. Is Beth a clone? Now, I know what you're thinking. Nemo, that theory is so old. New Rockstars already did it. The game theorists already did it. You already did it. And to that, I say shut up. No, I'm just kidding. I understand this theory has been done a lot before, but when we first dropped ours, it was just right after the ABCs of Beth. We didn't wait for the season to finish and wrap up, meaning we missed a lot of stuff. And with a lot of information we learned at San Diego Comic-Con, we actually have a new take on this theory and a new opinion of it, along with the fact that this could make a reappearance in season 4, so it's good to take a look at it again with just a pair of fresh eyes. Because for a long time, people tried to answer the question, is Beth a clone? Is this the real Beth? Is it not? And we feel like we figured it out, but the answer is not that simple. So let's start at the beginning. First of all, it is very safe to say this will come back in season 4, at least in some form. It's not typical that a Rick and Morty plot will carry over into the next episode, and when they do, it's pretty important stuff, like Beth and Jerry's divorce, or the Citadel of Ricks, or Evil Morty, whatever that is. Rick and Morty is usually very one and done, then if you're lucky, we'll see it in a few episodes, or a whole season, or 2 whole seasons, but with this, they addressed it just episodes later. So if you somehow don't know about this plot point and have seen Rick and Morty, basically at the end of ABCs of Beth, Beth commits straight up murder on Tommy Lipkins, the weird sexually charged child she left in her imaginary land Rick created for her as a child, which caused her to finally confront Rick on his actions and his influence on her, to which Rick replies with how close Beth is to him, and she's forced to confront herself for the first time. Rick ends up giving her 2 choices, basically staying in the life she's chosen and tough it out, or replace herself with a perfect clone while she travels the cosmos, figuring herself out. That episode famously does not show Beth's decision, but it does show her coming to the dinner table and seeming happy for the first time in a while. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I'm like, oh man, she's the clone. But part of me was still very unsure, and I think that was a great way of doing it. The season 3 finale, the Rick, Shuri, and Morty date, explores further on if Beth is a clone or not, with Beth actually having an existential crisis over it, freaking herself out, and locking her and the family in a cabin where Rick will never find them, out of the fear of being killed by Rick if she is a clone. But ultimately, after Rick finally confirms it, she ultimately assumes that she's not a clone and she's the real deal. But that's the trick, that's the sign that points to the fact that the real Beth is out there in the cosmos and this is a clone. The ABCs of Beth drove home one thing: Beth is just like her father at her core. Alcoholism, becoming more and more dry and desensitized to things, unfeeling towards the world, it all just manifested in different ways. And let's be honest, she's been a mess since season 1, at least with the alcoholism. She's also incredibly smart. Rick even admitted this himself. And to Rick, everyone's inferior or dumb to him, so calling someone smart out of his own mouth is a huge compliment and a measure of somebody's intelligence. Beth is capable of being just as smart as Rick, or if not very close, similar to how we've seen Morty act in the past. So we've established that Beth is incredibly intelligent and mostly unfeeling towards the world, very cynical like her father. So if it really was her, why would she question if she was a clone or not? She would have the memory of her declining a clone's creation and carrying on with her day. She probably would have been disgruntled, but again, she's mostly uncaring towards things and becoming slowly more desensitized, so I feel like she would have been able to get over this pretty quick, probably opening a bottle of wine and just kind of passing out. But this Beth we see towards the end of the season is attentive, nurturing, and genuinely caring about her family and her marriage. I don't think an experience like Fruppyland would bring that much of a change in Beth, especially after all they've been through. She's the daughter of Rick Sanchez. Do you know how much stuff she goes through in a week? She would still be as unfeeling as she has been, as unsensitized, and as willing as she was to continue rolling with the punches as she has been. She would have treated getting back together with Jerry as a chore, a quick pit stop at his apartment to tell him to pack up his things and move back in. The Beth we know would never have had a deep talk with him and even kiss him because she doesn't know who she is. If in all honesty, I don't even think the Beth we knew up until this point would care if she was a clone at all. It seems like Roiland and Harmon are trying to mislead us by having us watch clone Beth struggle with her identity and solidifying herself as the real deal. Yet during this rationalization, she barely behaves like our Beth. She acts like an ideal Beth, the perfect Beth, or at least a different Beth who actually starts to question things. What's more of a perfect Beth for the Smith family than one who fixes her marriage and downplays the authority of her father? If this is true, our real Beth is out there exploring the cosmos, becoming more and more like her father, which is the path she seemed like she was heading down in the first place. Those similarities are amplified in her hypothetical decision to leave. Rick didn't provide her with an out, he provided her with the option he wished he gave Beth when he left, because he does care about her, and he wanted her as far away from him as possible, at least for a bit. But here we are with Beth repeating her father's actions and leaving her home dimension and abandoning her family. This time someone's able to get away with it trauma-free, although realistically Morty and Summer won't care all too much because they did the exact same thing earlier in the season with romancing the stone. If this is what's happening, then Beth may return in season 4 in a huge story episode, maybe against Tammy and Phoenix Person or Evil Morty, as a Beth is more like her father than she's ever been, who's really tapped into how smart she is, while still being the Beth we're used to and kind of annoyed by. Quick on her feet, tech-savvy, and even more of an alcoholic. This theory does make sense if you look at it this way, but there are some pretty glaring holes. Rick made a point to say that this clone would not go AWOL, but here we see that's exactly what Beth is doing. It would make sense for Rick to make an imperfect clone like that, especially a clone that would denounce her and get back together with Jerry. This is truly a conundrum because there's so many sides to it. So ultimately, in my opinion, the answer to whether or not Beth is herself or a clone is they don't know. That's right, I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that the writing team and the team behind Rick and Morty has no idea if this is the real Beth or a clone. If you think I'm crazy, just listen. A lot of this news comes from 2019 San Diego Comic-Con during a lot of panels where we got to ask the creators a ton of questions, including plot-heavy questions like, is this Rick's original Morty? To which they did not respond with a yes or no or a you'll see in season 4. They responded with they don't know. According to them, that's sort of a Schrodinger's cat situation. Once they open that box, they could come up with something, but right now, they haven't opened that box. It's both a yes and a no. They haven't looked at it and they're not sure what they want to do with it.
One of the unspoken rules, I guess, in the writer's room is just sort of like marching forward and running from those questions. I mean, we have those questions in our head, but we're sort of like afraid to answer a lot of those things. They're harder things to answer even for us. That's like, I always say that Schrodinger's cat because we haven't looked in that box as a team. Yeah, we don't know if it's alive or dead.
And that was kind of shocking to hear, but that's how the Rick and Morty team operates. You may assume with this whole thing that there's some big serialized story going on, they have these huge whiteboards filled with information, but in reality, they'll be the first to tell you that they're not doing that. They're figuring this show out as they go. They may have some idea, but I mean, if they themselves are calling these plot-heavy questions a Schrodinger's cat situation that they haven't looked at yet, that's probably the case for a lot of what's going on, including probably Evil Morty. There's been writers who have said they've gone out of their way to change plot points just because people on Twitter have figured them out. That shows how fast they're willing to change things around. Rick and Morty isn't going in some clear-cut direction and there's not some story they're trying to tell here. And that's why I think they truly don't know if Beth is a clone or not. They created this plot point to be open-ended so that they could take it in any direction they wanted to in season 4 or beyond. They love to keep things ambiguous. Dan Harmon talked about keeping Rick's past a mystery because it ultimately makes him a more interesting character, and he's 100% right. They gave Rick some backstory that we could kind of figure him out and he wouldn't be that much of an enigma. He wouldn't be as interesting. Instead, keeping it open-ended keeps the fans spectating, theorizing, and interested in the show. And they managed to pull that off with Beth perfectly. There's so much evidence on both sides. She is a clone, she's not a clone, that I refuse to believe they know for sure, and I think they wrote this on purpose because that keeps the show fresh. In fact, there's a chance we might never get an answer on whether or not Beth is a clone. And to me, that's kind of way more interesting than if they tried to give it some quick answer. There's all these people out here who have made theory videos saying they figured it out, that Beth is a clone or Beth isn't a clone, but in reality, I think the truth is that no one knows, and no one might ever know. Could they address it in season 4? Could there be a big episode where Beth comes back? That would be awesome. I would love that. But right now, it seems like Rick and Morty is really good at keeping these plot threads going without a clear direction or answer, because that's what creates the most interesting stories. Literally, if you look at the most theorized thing, Evil Morty, that just started in season 1. They probably had no plan for where that was gonna go. And they didn't even address it in season 2. They just gave him a cameo in season 3. At this point, I don't even know if Evil Morty is trying to build up to something still or not. I don't know if they have a plan for what they're doing with this. I think with the renewal of 70 episodes, they're finally going to start patching out like an overarching story if they could, but at the exact same time, they can keep pushing on like they always have, just figuring it out as they go along. But ultimately, for the case of Beth, they haven't looked in that box yet, which means we can theorize about it forever! Yes! I never have to leave this recording booth. My life is so sad. I hope this video didn't come off as us trying to rehash some old theory, because I generally think this is a new take on it. And again, this is information we just found out at Comic-Con. This is a video we couldn't make before. At the end of the day, it's just fun to theorize and take a look at something you love and try to figure it out. Try to pop the hood of it a little bit and look inside. Do carmatiferous work for cartoons? I'm not quite sure. Either way, at the end of the day, I really want to know what you guys think about this. Do you think I'm onto something here? Do you think I'm crazy? Let us know in those comments down below, or tweet to us at Roundtable Vids or me at It's Retro Nemo. If you want to help out the Roundtable, you can consider supporting us on Patreon or become a member of the channel to get exclusive access to scripts and even avatars. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the Roundtable for more incredible cartoon content. Guys, I'm Nemo, this is Rick and Morty Theory, and I will see you next time. Peace.